My name is Davis Wardwell. I'm 18
My
years
name's
old.
Lisa
My name is
Hannon.
Noah Blunt. I'm the student pastor here
Trio
at Westside.
Quinn. I'm actually Charlie's cousin.
David Thomas, here with Charlie.
Austin Gregory. Thank you for having
My
me.
name is Donovan
My name is
Jones.
Micah Aver. I'm a student at Lounge High
All
School.
right. Well, Mr. Charlie, you're going to lead us out here tonight on your Young Minds podcast.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad to have our next guest on with us, man. It's good to have you back, Jesse. Like, it's been a really long time. I think, has it been, I don't know, it's been a while. Has it been about a year for,
I think it's been a little bit over a year, because I know it's been about a year since you were on mine, and I think I was on yours before that. I think it was close though, but I think it's been about a year.
Yeah. I think we're like pulling the same thing that we did last time. I think, but we kind of did them like pretty close together.
Yeah.
And so for people that are like confused by what I just said, we just did an episode over on Jesse's, so make sure to go check that out. Depending on when that'll be out, I don't know, but I'll just have to let you know when it's out. But today we're going to be doing a deep dive on evangelism, and because Jesse, you saw my clip or my like short that I did, like spreading the gospel, right, and not being afraid to do it, and because let's be real, like anybody that we see, right, we need to spread it to them, even though we're a little bit, there's fear in that, right, or depending on what the devil may be using to stop you from spreading the gospel. But for you, like, what does evangelism mean when you're like, to you, like, as not really a definition, but just like when you're spreading it, like what's been the best method for you, I guess, is I would start off that.
So I think when it comes to evangelism, there's a couple different ways that you can really approach it. I don't think anyone is necessarily wrong. I actually think that you need to be able to do a few different things depending on who you are talking to, who you're evangelizing. The first thing I think, and this is something, it's kind of it's not as active, like you don't have to actively go and do something, but I'm working on, I'm done with it now. I'm just working on the editing, but I have a book that's going to be coming out. It should be coming out like next month or maybe December of 2025.
Sweet.
It just depends on how quickly I can get through the editing process.
Man, who knows? Depending on how quick you get through it, we can link it. Like, this episode is going to be coming in November, so depending on how quick you get it, we might be able to link it down there.
Yeah, and I'll keep you updated on that to see if I can. Like I said, it really just, I've got it all written. I'm just going back through and doing editing, and it's on the fruit of the Spirit. And I have the book. I'm actually going to have a workbook that goes along with it that helps you kind of go through and get a little bit more. But one of the first things that I really saw, and this is a deep dive, like I have been working on this for over a year, talking about the fruit of the Spirit. One of the first things I really started seeing is the fruit. If you are being led by the Holy Spirit, the fruit is something that you are going to display. It's just going to happen naturally. It's a natural process from being led by the Spirit. The love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. All of this stuff will just naturally start coming off of you or coming out of you. And that will naturally draw people in. The fruit is something that it's attractive to people. I think of, I don't know if Charlie, if you are a friend of, or not a friend of, a fan of the show The Office.
Yes, love The Office.
So,
dude, I've got a World's Best Boss mug right here on my desk. Yeah,
nice.
I'm a fan.
There's an episode where Michael Scott is talking about, and I have this quote in my book, but there's a part where Michael Scott is talking about a book that he is writing. It's called Somehow I Manage. And in the book, he'll have these random one-liners, but he never has any substance to it. But one of these is, everybody likes the guy who offers them a stick of gum. Now, that sounds really like random, but I mean it's true. Like if you think
Yeah.
about the person who is willing like to give you something like that, instantly, like when that person starts to come around, it's going to put people in a better mood. They're going to be
Right.
happy to see that person versus someone who is, grumpy or constantly negative or whatever.
Of course.
And you have the same thing with the fruit. So being led by the Holy Spirit is going to cause these things to naturally just come out of you. And when these things are just naturally coming out of you, a natural reaction from other people is going to be to want to be closer to that. So if you're showing, um, just as an example, one that you would probably get a lot when you're around other people, you could do joy. Would be pretty frequently pretty easy to see. Kindness would be another one that's pretty easy to see, and those are if you look at a situation. Let's say if again if you're looking at your job, right? You have two coworkers, and one of them, no matter what happens, nothing is ever good enough. They're always grumpy. They're always down. They're always talking about how like this terrible thing happened this weekend or last night, or they just don't want to be there. They hate their job and blah 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 blah. Or if you have a person who, and it's not over the top and fake, but they're
Right.
genuinely in a good mood. They're genuinely seem to be a happy person.
Yep.
They're willing to go out of their way to help you to try to be of benefit to you in some way. I think, and it kind of goes without saying, you're going to naturally gravitate towards one of those two people, and
Right.
it's going
Yeah.
to be the one that's displaying the fruit. Um, so that's something that I mean, I think I kind of already had an idea, but I didn't really make the connection to that and as far as evangelism goes until I really started diving into this and thinking about and evangelism has been something that's been on my mind a lot recently, but
Mhm.
kind of be thinking about evangelism while also working on this book at the same time really brought that out. And then as far as something you can actively do with evangelism, I would say that there are a few different ways that you can approach it, and this is where it kind of depends on who you are talking to. I
Mhm.
think that there are some people who you can approach it in a logic type of way. Someone who thinks things through logically. They're maybe analytical in their thought process.
Right.
There could be people that maybe they're going to be more pulled by um, uh, emotional things or
Mhm.
things of that nature. There are a lot of different approaches you can take that can be difficult to decide, especially if
Yeah.
you're in a situation where you don't personally know the individual.
Right.
Um, I think one of the best pieces of advice I can give to somebody that's wanting to really start to get into this um, is just, I mean, first thing, don't be afraid. Like, just step
Okay.
out. And the one thing that makes it easier to step out is get comfortable with the phrase "I don't know," but I can
Mhm.
find out.
Yeah.
Um, I know something for me when I started my podcast, there was a lot of, even now, depending on the topic that I talk about, I get a lot of pushback from people of different camps, whether they be
Mhm.
atheists or Islamic or New Age Christian and stuff like that. And for a while I felt like I had to have an answer. Like if they asked a question and I didn't have an answer, then that was me failing the gospel, me failing God, right?
Mhm.
But I've gotten to where I've realized, and it's taken a long time for me to realize this, but and this works even better if it's in a personal one-on-one conversation with somebody where it's okay if I say I don't know, as long as I followed up with a, but I can find out and I'll get back to you. because that shows them I'm trying to have an honest conversation. It gives me an opportunity to start the conversation back up with them again, because then I can go look into it, come back, and give them what I think the answer is. But also, it's it's never going to end well if you just try to pull an answer out of nowhere and come up with something, because then something else is going to happen. You're going to get caught in a lie, or in something that you just made up, or something along those lines. Something's going to happen, and it's going to end up being worse. So if you can just kind of take a step out and do it, and then be comfortable saying that you don't know the answer to everything. And then if you do that too, if there are people that are kind of defensive with the conversation, if you
Yeah.
are willing to admit you don't know something, that usually will drop tensions quite a bit pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah. And, you're talking about like the different ways to approach it, like emotionally or logically, and it made me think about, here recently, well, I'll say recently, maybe a couple months ago. And this is going to sound like absolutely crazy, like, because I don't recommend doing this, by the way, if you have your own podcast, but, you got to do what you got to do. But there was one day where I went up to somebody's church. It was a friend of mine's. He was the youth pastor there, and I was going to record 3 episodes that day. It was going to be a deep dive on forgiveness with him, his pastor, and then another lady, right? And so I recorded those, but then and then there was I was going to record like a 4th one back at my church. I was recording 4 episodes in a day, by the way. That was crazy, but that's not
Yeah.
the point I was trying to make. We went to lunch after I'd recorded those episodes at this place, and you're familiar with probably where Moody's at, right? It's close to me, right? And that's like one of the heartbeats of where I'm at, right?
Yeah.
And at this restaurant, there was like a bunch of military guys there, because it's like pretty much right by the base. And I'll tell you right now, I have my confidence like for sharing the gospel, like I know what it is, but it just like my brain goes dumb and numb, right? Like when I'm trying to share. And but my friend that I was up there recording with and everything, he obviously, with him being a pastor, but he was even like this before, because he grew up in church and things, and he studies, like he has his knowledge and everything. And so there's this guy, he comes up, and like pretty much every table's full, because it's full of like military guys, and we're thinking, why in the world is he coming to sit with us? Because wouldn't he want to sit with like somebody that he knows? Well, he comes and sit with us, and we're about to leave, but like I could see where the conversation was going, because my friend, I could tell he was fixing to start off a conversation, So I was like, all right, I better get ready to sit down. And he comes and sits down. Well, he starts talking, and he's a British guy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even go on a mission trip. Look at that. The foreigner came to me. Let's go. And so like, what was so cool is and God's done this like a couple times with me and this guy, when we're sharing, is he's got more of like the history, the facts, like he's got more of the logical side of why you should follow Jesus. And like I've got more of the like what I do is I default to like my testimony, so the emotional side. So we were giving this dude both sides, at the same, and it was the funniest thing. He said, in his British accent, he said, "Man, this is kind of a heavy topic for lunch." And I'm thinking to myself, well, you must have never met a Southern Baptist before then, because we have these conversations all the time, and but like even though, and it was funny because like I said, I did 4 episodes that day. That wasn't even the highlight of my day. It was sharing the gospel with him. And like, he said something about, because he, said he was, it's agnostic when you don't believe anything, right? Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. He said he was agnostic.
You're unsure. You think there may be something, but you're not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. He said he was agnostic. And then towards the end, he said, well, you're not going to shake my faith. And I was like, there is something there then. There is something there. Like, it just, and because he kept saying, like, I don't really believe in anything, yada, yada, yada. He's like, I'm not really sure, and he was really respectful about it. Like, he, like, and that's the coolest part is that, like, he could have walked away at any point. He's like, I ain't hearing this. I just want to eat lunch and go away, and go back. Like, but he sat there and heard us talk. And, I still remember his name too. His name was Josh. And, I pray for him periodically just because I think about it. Like, gosh, I hope something that we said God's going to use that maybe, now or years down the road, that He's going to think about that and be like, man, like they were right, about what they were
Yeah.
trying to tell me. And, you know, and so it's so weird because you get that fear, but then afterwards, because even with my friend there, I was like, oh boy, like I can't just let him just take this. I've got to make sure that I didn't want to seem dumb,
Yeah.
in front of him, and like not seem that I wasn't representing Christ well, right? And so, because I'll be the first to tell you, my knowledge is not as I don't have as much knowledge as he does, but I'm going to tell him what I do know. And when we were sitting there and like I was nervous, yes, but I mean by the end of it, I was like, dude, that was like one of the best things I've ever done. And so like, and I want to do it again, but you know what's stopping me? Fear. It's like, well, that and a busy schedule. But like, again, if you want, like we said in your episode when I was recording with you, in yours, it's like if you're gonna make something, you're gonna make time for something, you'll do it. Like if you want to do it, you'll make time for it.
Yeah.
And like, and so like you have to be more intentional. I think that's another thing. People need to be more intentional about sharing the gospel too, which I'm saying that for myself. Like I'm not saying that like, oh, what do you do it all the time? No, I don't. And I need to get better at it. But, we need to like as a whole, like if we're out to like, because my pastor talks about it all the time, like talk to your waitress, like, just be nice with her. Like, right. She might be having a bad Sunday after you're going to leave church, don't be rude. All right. Cause you just came from church. Don't be rude. All right. Be that light in that place, whether you're 4,000 miles away or you're in a Mexican restaurant, because apparently that's where all the Christians go after they go to church. All right. So but like, and I mean it can be that one smile or just that one compliment or whatever, and just being the love of Christ that makes them go, man, like those Christians aren't so bad. Because I think I will say Christians are kind of an uphill battle, right, in some instances, because people have had bad experiences in the churches or whatever or whatnot, and so we kind of have to fight that, like and also meet people where they're at, and also and to be that light, because I mean somebody was not that light previously and now they've got a bad taste in their mouth, and so we have to remember that and be intentional about it.
Yeah, I think so there you brought up several good points, and I've got something that may be of benefit to you and other people that are that maybe hesitate to share their gospel because they don't feel like they have the answers, or they don't feel like they can respond to everything. Um, so like I said, the first thing I want mention was like be comfortable saying I don't know. There's nothing wrong with saying I don't know. It shows honesty, it shows humility, and it usually will always lead the conversation in a positive direction.
Right.
Now there there could be someone, and be ready for this. It is possible there could be somebody who is just looking to try to make Christianity look bad, and they'll use that as as an opportunity to do that. Now, secondly, I would say realize that it's not your job to convert the person. It's your and
Mm-hmm.
you are not responsible for the results. You're responsible for your obedience. Period in the story. Let God deal with the results. That's where, and He's better than us anyways at that. So let Him deal with the results and working in that person more. All He wants from us is just to be obedient.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, as far as getting more comfortable doing it, I do have a resource. There is an individual. He was actually on my podcast. His name is Braxton Hunter. He is the president of Trinity Seminary and School of the Bible in um, well, they're up in Indiana, but they're mostly online, and he has a podcast too. It's called Trinity Radio.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had him on. He has a book, and we talked about this topic specifically. But his book is called Core Facts. It's CoreFacts, and the whole book, like the name Core Facts, is an acronym, and it's if you can remember this acronym, basically it gives you a cheat sheet that you can hold on to, that if you can, like I said, if you can remember what this acronym is, then you can have this. And if you go into conversation with somebody, you can kind of walk through these steps. And it works in a couple different ways. So the CORE is an argument just for theism, just the existence of a God, not even necessarily the Christian God. But then the FACTS is an argument specifically for Jesus as God
Mhm.
and the Christian God. So if you come into, let's say you come into contact with somebody and you start having this conversation and they're agnostic or they're an
Mm.
atheist, well, then you could start off with the core part of that and make an argument for there being some type of a creator. Well, let's say you come into contact with somebody who says, "Well, yeah, there's a God out there, but I don't know who it is, or I don't think it's the Christian God." Well, then you can drop the first part of that and just go with the facts, and
Mhm.
you've got an argument there.
Yep.
Um, I'll run through these really quickly, but then, like I said, I'll send you a link to the book, Charlie, afterwards, and if
Yeah.
you're interested in it, you can get it, or
Mhm.
you can post in the description or whatever. And then
Totally.
if
Yeah.
people are interested, I do have, like I said, it's I think it was just over an hour long. I had Braxton on and we talked through this book, but then we also talked through some specific examples to stuff going on culturally. But C in core, or walk through these. C is cause. So everything that begins to exist has a cause, and the universe began to exist, so therefore the universe has a cause. Now, some of
Mhm.
these, there's going to be pushback from people that they could bring up, but for the most part, most people are probably not going to know these arguments well enough to like really like
I
hammer down on something, but
Mhm.
you can at least like get the ball rolling for this. um so if you, and I'll give a little example for each of these two as we walk through them. So like I
Okay.
said, C is cause. um Everything that begins to exist has a cause. So the universe began to exist, the universe has a cause. Think of it like, if you had an infinite row of books, right? So it's infinite in both directions. Half the books are red and half the books are black, and you remove all the black books, how many are left? Well, it's still infinite. Like it doesn't
Right.
logically make sense. So if you take that to look at the universe, if the universe existed in the past eternally, like forever, then it would be impossible for us to get to this moment that we're at, because you'd have
Mhm.
to cross infinite to get here. And so it just logically it doesn't make sense. So that's just an argument that there was at one point in time the universe started. And I think even most science would agree that there's a starting point of the universe. They just don't agree that it's God.
Right.
The second is the O is order. And for this, there is very specific fine tuning that is needed for life to exist on Earth. I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, the level of nitrogen in our atmosphere, it is such a precise amount that's needed,
Mhm.
and the
Yeah.
statistical probability of that would be like if you took dimes and covered the state of Texas in dimes and stacked all of those dimes up to the moon, and then you painted one dime red and threw it somewhere into that pile, and then you tell someone blindfolded, walk in however far you want, whatever direction you want, and then just stop and pick up a dime. The chances that they're going to pick that red dime, that's the chance that the nitrogen just happens to be. And that's just one of the elements that needs to be perfect. So there's so much. And I think the more that we learn about how complex our world and our universe is, the more it seems likely that it had a creator and it didn't just randomly happen.
Right. And I mean,
Um,
like, this is a small thing, but like, why 75% water, right? Like, what, like, why do we, it's just
yeah,
like, it's like we can pinpoint that number, right? Like,
yeah,
and I mean, that'd be enough for me to go, like, even if I wasn't a Christian, to be like, well, obviously there's something because you got an exact number for this and that. Like,
yeah,
and I love the illustration, like, well, every building has a builder. So,
yeah. And that's
right.
what you don't.
And I love that.
You never come across anything that, like, if you find a a watch on the beach, right? You're not, and I think I forget who uses this illustration. Um, but if you find a watch on the beach, you're not going to be like, oh, wow, the sand just on its own arranged itself into a perfect position to where it actually changed the substance of the sand itself to be metal and copper and plastic and glass, and it just happened to arrange in the perfect position to where all those things came together and it's a watch. And like you would say someone is completely like foolish if they said that about a watch. Like how much more foolish is it that you say it about the entire universe?
Mhm.
It does not make sense logically. Um, the next one is rules, and that is that there are things that are the vast majority of people would just say are wrong always,
Mm.
and there's not really a reason why except we just feel that it's wrong. So, as an example, and this it maybe sound a little morbid, but to get the point across, I think most people would agree it is wrong to torture puppies because you like the
Yep.
sound they make when they squeal because they're being tortured. Like most people would just say like that is just objectively wrong.
Right.
And so because of that, like where did that come from? Because that doesn't necessarily go along with the idea that we evolve that over time. There's just it doesn't seem like it's something that could just happen on its own. It's outside of us. We can't measure it. We all just know it innately. Um, the last one for the core is E, and this is experience. Like you
Mm.
can have an experience for yourself where if you I think if you genuinely seek after God, even if you're not 100% believing, if you genuinely seek after God, I think God will reveal himself to you. I think
Mhm.
it's that simple. Um, you can I mean you can see it throughout, the what is it? The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel is a great book, and that's an example of it. He actually went into this trying to disprove
Yep.
Christianity and ended up proving Christianity. Um,
Mhm.
Now, if we get into the facts, and again, I'll move through these a little quickly, but F,
Are you good?
fatal. Jesus's wounds on the cross were fatal. Um, the Roman soldiers were very, very good at crucifying people and killing them that way. So they really didn't have a reason to not do it. Um, it doesn't make sense. There's some people that say like he didn't actually die and he revived later in the tomb, but like the the amount of damage that would have happened to his body would make it almost impossible for him to be brought back now with the medical technology that we have. So it's inconceivable that it would work that way back then.
Right.
Um, A is appeared. We have written record that Jesus appeared to not only his disciples but upwards of 500 other people afterwards. That is documented in Scripture. Um, now, now I'll get to a possible pushback after this next one. C is
Yep.
committed. So the disciples were radically changed. We can see the evidence of James, who was the brother of Jesus, who, if you can imagine someone that you're really, really close with. Charlie, I know you don't have siblings, correct?
I do not know.
Okay, so imagine if you had someone that you're really close with, maybe like a brother or a sister, who you've seen all their bad. You've
Mhm.
seen when they're grumpy in the morning. You've seen when they don't want to do the chores, and so they push it off on you. You've seen like literally at their worst. You've seen it.
Yep.
What would it take for you to then all of a sudden, like the flip of a switch, turn to say, "Nope, they are God." Not even just they're just a really good person, like, they are God.
That would
I
be,
mean,
gosh,
it would
man,
it
that'd
would
be
take
so
a
hard.
it would take a lot. I
Yeah.
have a sister, and, we get along really, really well. We did not always get along really, really well, especially when we were both
Yeah.
in school,
Yep.
and I don't know that just seeing the ins and outs of somebody's life like that, like, it's hard to get to that view.
Mhm.
Then we also see the testimony of Paul. Paul was, I mean, he literally was on his way to Damascus to get Christians to kill them and put them in prison.
Mhm.
And he radically changes to the point of going to Caesar, and we know this from sources outside the Bible, but he went to Caesar. Or we know he was going to Caesar from the Bible, but outside the Bible, we know that he did get there, and he was actually beheaded by Caesar. And the reason he was beheaded was because he was a Roman citizen, and it was illegal for them to crucify him. So his willingness to take to go to death in the name of Christ, someone that he was persecuting, is a radical change in Paul, and that is evidence that something happened. Now, a lot of scholars, atheists, stuff like that, they won't even deny that these people believe they saw Jesus after he died. But the
Mhm.
best, to my knowledge, the most well accepted pushback for this is that everyone just had a mass hallucination. They were all separate hallucinations, and it just happened that they all hallucinated the exact same thing at the exact same time, but it was just mass hallucination.
But
Like,
that's a movie script like that. You
right,
know that only happens in the
right.
no like
Um,
that's some
yeah,
sci-fi stuff.
right.
You
Um,
know.
so beyond that, we have testimony, we have reliable testimony, we have the scriptures, we have the early church creeds and writings. We can see from even non-Christian authors, like if you're familiar with ancient Roman history, you'll know names like Tacitus and Josephus. Josephus was a Jewish historian. Tacitus was a Roman historian. Neither of them were Christian. Both of them wrote about this guy named Jesus who had a cult following of people who even talked about them getting the name Christians, like we see in the Bible, because they followed the Christ. Um, and so there's a lot of testimony and things there. And then the S in facts is salvation. You've walked through this whole thing. You've gone through, like, if this is the evidence that's there, this is pointing in one direction. So you have to do something with that now. Like, you have to
Right.
answer this question. You have to make a decision. What are you going to do with the evidence that's provided? And that's where you can kind of walk them through that. We see here that Jesus was God. He came, he lived the life that we couldn't live. He died the death that we should have died. He went to the grave, he resurrected, he ascended. He's now at the right hand of the Father, and he wants a relationship with you. All you have to do
Right.
is accept it. Um, so it's a lot, like, hearing me talk through. I know there's a lot of
There's
points
a
there,
lot. Yeah.
but if you and that's a, I'm able to do it mostly from memory.
Mhm.
But it's because I've looked at it a lot. I've read
Right.
through Braxton's book. I think I've read through it twice now. But if you can remember those, even just remember the COREFACTS, like,
Mhm.
you don't have to memorize everything, but you can just remember what each of those letters stands for, and that'll give you something that you can take into the conversation.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no,
That makes sense.
there's there's a lot of different stuff you can bring up, and this kind of goes back to I mentioned you may come across people who you are not going to be able to say something that's going to get them to respond positively.
Right.
Um, I think you have to be, like I said, you have to be okay with that.
Yep.
God does not want, you're not responsible for the results. You're
No.
responsible
And they're not
for,
rejecting you. So
yeah,
that's what you have to remember. They're not rejecting you.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
and you are only responsible for what you can control. And the only thing you can control is whether or not you listen to the leading of the Holy Spirit. I
Right.
even I'll throw this out there, and then we can we go on to another topic. But
Mhm.
there's again, Braxton Hunter. One of the first things I saw of him, he did a debate with a man named Matt Dillahunty, and it was about the existence, or no, it was is Jesus God? and Braxton was debating yes, Matt was debating no. He's either atheist or agnostic, but I mean, Braxton had completely just demolished Matt in this debate. It was not even
Mhm.
close. Um, Anytime Braxton would come up with a point, Matt would respond with, "Well, I just don't find that convincing." Rather than trying to give pushback, he just said, "I just don't find it convincing." And so at
I
the
don't find that
end,
answer convincing. Sorry.
right?
I-
So
Oh,
Braxton realized, and I talked to him about this a little bit, but he realized kind of in that moment that there's nothing that he's going to say that's going to sway him. And
right.
really what he's trying to do is not even necessarily, I mean, he would love to change Matt's opinion, but really what he's trying to do is he's trying to show people that this is the actual logical view to take, is that Jesus is real, he is God. And so he asked Matt, he said, Matt, and this is the end of the debate. He said, if a meteor crashed into the moon and it left debris on the moon, and just by chance that debris spelled out, Jesus is God. But it not only spelled it out in English, it spelled it out in Spanish, in German, in Hebrew, and Swahili, and like 30 other languages. Then would you say, okay, this is evidence. This couldn't have just happened on its own. Jesus must be God. And Matt's response was, no, because it could just be aliens pulling a prank on us.
Bro,
So
what?
there are people who, and I think um, people who are not believers don't like to hear this, and I've changed my view on this a little bit, but I do think that there are a lot of people who refuse to um, acknowledge Jesus as God, refuse to acknowledge Christianity, or even just refuse to acknowledge God. And I think vast majority of them, it's because they know that they're going to have to give something up if that is true, and they refuse to do that. It's
Right.
not actually about the evidence or what they say is lack of evidence. It's not about not being convinced. It's about, I don't like what I'm going to have to give up, which, if you really think about it, yes, you do have to give up stuff, but it's nothing compared to what you get in return.
Right.
But there's something that they don't want to give up. And so they're not willing to actually engage with the evidence that's there. Um,
Yeah. 100%. And talking about the things that like people are worried about, like they have to give this up and whatever. But like, I'll tell you just from this side, all right, not on heaven's side, but on this side, well, the things that you'll get for one, and that's a big one for me, like we talked about in your episode, is friendship, right? Like, and godly
yeah,
friendship. All right. That's a big one. Like, and just and all the things that you will like, that's one big one. And also I think your purpose, God will give you purpose too in that. 'Cause for a little while, even while I was a Christian, you still sometimes might be searching, especially at the age I'm at, right? Going back to what we said in yours is a little bit, um, you are trying to find that purpose. And let's be real, I think, people say they find it at a certain age. I think we're always going to be finding that. Just at different periods of our life, we're trying to find, what our purpose is, and
yeah,
like, and that's one thing that God gives you. And so, like, I mean, if hey, I mean, I know this is simple, or like for me to say because I am a Christian, but like, you know, for me that'd be enough. It'd be like, yeah, if He's going to give me a purpose, heck yeah, I'm going to follow Him. Like, and I mean, He has, and I mean, you know, and sure, I will say this, like, I was in, because I mean, I've heard it from my friend's mouth. He said you were a very receptive person when we started sharing with you. And I mean, I'm just going to encourage people. It won't always be that way, like you said. You're going to have people that just, you will not be able to convince them. And that's not your job, like you said. We're not supposed to, we're not the ones that make the change, right? God is. But, um, and it may be disheartening, but again, they're rejecting God and not you. Um, and, but I mean, I will say, like, it makes you, I mean, I will say it does make you sad though when they do, like when they reject it though. I mean, just because, one, you're out there, you putting your heart out there, right? I mean, you might be telling a story that happened in your life, whatnot, and so you're letting them into your personal life, And like, especially with the method that I've gone with a lot of times with telling my testimony and stuff. And then it's
Yeah.
just like, man, I told you all that. And then wham, you start to think, God, was that like a waste? But then, like I walked away from that one guy. I was thinking, like, I wasn't thinking that, but I was like, gosh, we taught him all that. And it didn't seem like he really budged much, but we don't know what he was thinking about afterwards. Like, he might have been really thinking on those things, but we just didn't need to be there. Like, God was working
Yeah.
on him, but, it just took some time. And, I still pray for him all the time. I'm like, I pray that he, like, because I'm assuming he's back in England now, but like, I pray that he's like, that he's finally found God in that sense. I mean, because, especially, I'm thinking, because he's not that much older than me. Like, he was like in his 20s. Like, I'll be, my next birthday, I'll be 20. So, like, he was in his 20s. And, like, it's like, we're the prime, like, because that's one thing, too, that I was going to say for evangelizing to people. Like, you're the best at evangelizing your age group, and I'm the best at evangelizing to mine. Like, yes, somebody may listen, like vice versa. Like, somebody may listen, like, that's your age to me, or vice versa. But it's better the other way around.
Yeah.
In terms of, I mean, because I just think one of the, I guess, like really good examples I can think of, at least in my generation, is like Bryce Crawford, for example. I know you've probably seen his stuff. Like, it's so funny because I'll see him, like, he's like, I mean, really doing God's work out in these college campuses. And then, but also some of the things he posts, it's funny stuff, but like, or, that he like puts on a story. He's just like me, like, our humor or
Yeah.
what, so, and it's sometimes it's funny to watch that because sometimes, I feel like, and we have to be careful of this though. When we follow people, like for evangelizing, you really like their content, whatever. Don't worship them. Like they're following Jesus, and like you can learn from them. That's great. You can
Yeah.
learn from us, but don't worship us. Right?
Yeah.
Like we're nothing. But all right, like compared to what Jesus can give you. All right, He's just given us the words to speak. So like, and He's given us these platforms to use. But like, and like I said, Cliff and all them, they're great people, but we had to be really careful about that, because people are, oh my gosh, I love him. It's like, I do too, but like, not to the point where it's a worship kind of thing,
Yeah.
We love him because he's a great example and God's using him in a great way, but not to the point where it's like, it looks like you're following Bryce or this person over Jesus, and sure, Bryce has got some great morals, because he follows Jesus, but like, that could steer you in the wrong direction, and yeah.
Yeah, that's something to a good point to bring up.
Hmm.
Even Paul says, imitate him as he imitates Christ. So you're looking to imitate the things in Paul that Paul is getting from Christ, and you run a little bit of a danger if you put any individual on too high of a level. That I know people that have left the faith
Mm.
because they had a pastor or an evangelist or um, someone that they knew personally, even
Hmm.
who was a believer, and they put them up on this pedestal where they can do no wrong, and then they were human and they did
Yep.
wrong. And
Yep.
I can think of um, obviously I didn't end up leaving the faith because of this, and I actually have gone kind of back where um there was a pastor that I really really liked listening to. His name was Jeremy Foster.
Hmm.
um he was in I think his church was Hope City in Katy, Texas, maybe. um but he was pretty well known pastor for a little bit. I really enjoyed a lot of his stuff. He was really really good at how he presented things. Now, looking back, my views have changed a little bit, and I think he probably wasn't as good as what I gave him credit for at the time.
Hmm.
But he ended up having a pretty massive moral failure.
Mm.
Like big. He ended up he was having an affair with his wife.
Mm.
Then he ended up he I think he had said originally he was going to try to reconcile, and then he ended up not, and he left his wife for this other individual, or this other woman that he was in the relationship with. And it's been it was really, really messy. There was a lot of issues
Right.
that went on, but I can imagine if if I had had him up on a pedestal, that would have been very, very difficult. I mean, I hadn't even like really watched him for a little while, but I still had a fondness of him because I enjoyed listening to him before, and that was difficult to deal with. That
Mhm.
was difficult to try to navigate, and so you don't want to put anybody up on that pedestal. Christ
Right.
alone. Jesus is the only one. If you are if you're putting anybody else up there, it does not matter who they are. It doesn't matter how good you think they are, how well you think you know them, or how confident you are in them. They are human. They will mess up. And if you
Right.
put your faith in them, then you're going to be in for trouble
Right.
when something eventually happens.
Yeah. And I mean, I will say when like especially if you have like on that point, if you have an altercation like within your church, right? With somebody, whether it's a pastor or whatever, we're kind of this isn't really evangelism, but it's really important, for sure. It goes kind of like so I had like something like that happen to me and I had to like I talked to them because like I was like before I go all crazy and get up because I was upset and mad, but let me get their side and see if they even know that this is a problem, right? And they did not. Okay, and so for one, talk to the person. Two, you have to forgive in your heart because you can for like they can say sorry all they want, but then you have to forgive in here. Like I mean, you can have that conversation, but that's just step one, right?
Yeah.
You have to forgive in your heart, and that takes people. Somebody might be like, "Oh, well, how did you do that?" Time. Like it takes time. Like it's just not going to heal overnight, because we're
Yeah.
human, right? And so it takes time. And, like, especially when, 'cause again, you hear about examples all the time of people, like you said, leaving the faith for this and that and the other, or maybe, I don't know, I'm just an example throwing it out there, like somebody might have like said the wrong thing when they were evangelizing or whatever, and it just like threw somebody like completely for a loop and they just left, I don't know, they left the faith or something because of it, and I
Yeah.
hope that didn't happen. Or, because that's, I mean, speaking of like, pastors like that, if they, are in a leadership role like that, right? Um, that can really throw, I mean, a lot of people off because, like, what if he's teaching bad doctrine or something, and then that doctrine is getting taught and evangelized out through the world or to the area or whatever, and like then that just then you have to evangelize to that area because they were taught the wrong thing, and
Yeah.
so now you're having to make that ground up. That was kind of a random tangent there, but like you know that's something I do think about. Like if a leadership thing happens within a church, you can't let that affect your congregation and then the word getting spread out, into your community, because it can. I mean, people just don't think about it that way sometimes.
Yeah, and I think too, I think that could be an example of why. So I don't know if anybody listening is familiar with Mike Winger, but he is one I really really enjoy. He has helped me a lot. He has a pretty large following on YouTube. You can just search Mike Winger or Bible Thinker. I think is technically what his channel is called, but it probably usually just goes by his name. But one thing he has done recently, and you can tell when he does the videos and how he talks, he does not like doing the videos. He
Mm,
he does not like doing these types of videos, but I think it's good that he's done them and it's helpful. He finds or he has things he originally was not like actually going out and looking for issues. Excuse me, but there were issues that had been brought to his attention from people and he looks into them and he sees if they're legitimate. And then he uses his platform to expose pastors who are or ministers who are doing things that are hurting people.
mhm,
But not just hurting people, they are hurting people and doing it in the name of Christ.
mm,
And like uh, there's been some decent names that he has done some videos on, and it's been some pretty um, pretty bad stuff
Right.
that has come out, and he has even said like some of the worst stuff that he has had on videos is not even the worst of it. Like there's stuff that they know is true, they've confirmed, and they're trying to get it resolved in the background because they can't put it in a video. Like it would
Mm,
not be able to be up on YouTube.
mm,
Um, so stuff like that as an example, how do we turn this around to be something that we can use for evangelism? Well,
right.
I think willingness to call out people that are doing stuff like this is one, because then it shows the church has a really, really bad rap of just being after people's money. And
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of very high profile pastors that are after people's money and that's all they
Oh
care
yeah.
about. But if we're willing to call out stuff like that, I think it shows first of all, I mean, that we're willing to call out, but also shows how seriously we actually take the gospel. Um, so that's the first thing. But then also, if you have, let's say you're talking with somebody and they bring up, well, what about that pastor? You know, if let's say if I'm going back in time and I was promoting Jeremy Foster, like if I had my YouTube channel and I was promoting him and I was talking about how great he was, and then all this happened, like how would I respond to somebody? It's like, well, you said that he was such a great example, and he had this massive moral issue. Like this clearly is not real, is clearly not good. um Again, this kind of goes back to one of the first points I brought up, but just humility. I'm willing to say I was wrong. I
Mhm.
misjudged his character.
Right.
I should not. And in hindsight, that would be one where I would say I should not have elevated him to the position that I did. I shouldn't have been recommending him as much as I was to other people. And so, that's something I try to. Um, I don't throw out recommendations a ton unless like I have to either be super, super, super familiar with the ministry or very familiar with the person.
Right.
Um, if it's not one of those two, I'm not going to recommend them because I don't want something like that to happen.
Right.
But like, be willing to admit, like, because if you look at Christianity, look at the Bible, like how many characters or people in the Bible would you have included if you're trying to make Christianity look as neat and clean as possible?
Mm, mm.
None of them. Like
Nope.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Jesus
that's
is the
it.
only one. Especially if you go back and look at the Old Testament. I mean, Abraham uh, did not listen to what God told him and ended up having relations with another woman and caused a lot of issues there. We see Noah, who God chose to save the world through Noah, and as soon as he gets off his boat, he gets drunk in his vineyard and passes out naked. We see David, who literally um, slept with one of his soldiers' wife, got her pregnant, and then murdered the guy to cover it up. Like there is not a single person in the Bible that is painted in only a good light except for Jesus. Everyone else is flawed. Everyone else makes mistakes. And I think that's one of the things that testifies to the truth of Christianity and testifies to how powerful an interaction with God can be. Like we've talked about with your testimony, like looking at where they were and where they are now. Like I know this is getting back to the episode that we did for mine, but the
Yeah.
individual you talked about, that can show an example of the difference that's there and how someone has changed, and not just them changing on their own, but how God changed them, and that can be one of the most powerful tools for evangelism that you can have.
Amen. See, now people got to go and listen to that other episode because they got to figure out more details about who that individual
Right?
is. See, now you got to go listen to both of them. Yeah. Um, but wrapping up, is there anything that you want to add or anything like that before you plug? You can plug anything you want to or anything like that.
Yeah, I'd say just kind of like big picture, I know this is can be difficult for people to do. I know it can be hard to get out and just do it. It can be scary. Like we've talked about, not knowing what to say. Are they going to ask a question I don't know the answer to? Am I going to make Christianity look foolish? Um, just get out there and do it. God wants obedience. He doesn't want. We're not responsible for the results. We're responsible for our obedience, and that's it. So I would say try to find. Also, the best way to do this is, I mean, you can witness to random people, like you mentioned, Charlie. But your most effective evangelism is probably going to be to people you have a relationship with.
Hmm.
They're going to You're going to be able to build off of the relationship that's already there. Um, but just do it. Just get out there and do it. That's the best way to really get experience, get more comfortable with doing it. I will say there's one other thing that I think can help you, and this is, I haven't even mentioned this on my channel yet, but it's going to be coming. So I did mention it to you privately though, Charlie. Um, so I have I've got a podcast, Basically Biblical. I do have a website as well, basicallybiblical.com. Now, on that website, I'm in the process of kind of finalizing this revamping of everything there.
Hmm.
So on the website, I've got a couple things, and no one has to do any of this. This is just strictly if you want to, if you're in a
Yep.
position you want to, anything like that. You can always all anything that I do teaching wise is going to be for free. I'll always for sure all that's going to be free. Anything extra is going to be just that. It's going to be extra.
Hmm.
Um, on my website, I am going to have merch available, and I'm going to
Nice.
have memberships as well.
Yep.
Now, there's going to be a lot of stuff with the memberships, but all of it's going to be extra, kind of for fun, small benefits. Um, I do have, and I'm thinking I should have everything set up and going by the time this episode airs.
Yeah, you
But
never know.
I, I do have. If you listen to this, if you want to go check it out and you see something you like, um, a couple things for you, Charlie, or for people that are listening. If you see any merch that you want to get, you can
Hmm.
use. There's a promo code Young Mind
Nice.
Shop. It's just
Hey, nice.
YOUNGD or YOUNGMIND shop, and that will give you 10% off of your entire order. Or for the membership, same thing, Young Mind Member, all one word, YOUNGMINDMEMBER, and that'll give you 10% off of whatever membership you want to join up at. Now, the reason I bring that up is because in the merch, I have a section of merch, and it is called, um, shoot, I forget the name of it. uh,
Oh.
I've had this idea for a while, and I just finally named it. Scan for Life. Scan for Life is what it's called, and it's going to be a bunch of different stuff: shirts, hats, water bottles. But basically, the idea is all the stuff is it's designed by me to be attractive to draw people's eyes, and it's got a QR code on it. That's it. It's just got a QR code. So it's set up to where someone can, let's say um I don't know, you're at the gym or you're at school or you're at class or whatever. You're out in public and you have a water bottle that's got this QR code on it or a shirt. Someone sees it, they're interested, but they don't want to ask you about it, so they just scan it real quick. Well, it takes them to my website, Basically Biblical, but it's to a specific spot that is a video that is the gospel presentation.
Nice.
After that, it actually walks them through the next step. So after the gospel presentation, I have another video that'll go after that. It gives them like next steps. So you said yes, you want to have a relationship with Christ. What do you do next? And it actually like sets them up to find other people to listen to, find resources, find a good Bible, find a local church, and like I've got a ton of stuff I've put into this, and the point is for people to be able to get this and be able to kind of maybe even be a witness and evangelize without realizing you're doing it. It's as
Hmm.
simple as putting a t-shirt on or putting a hat on or whatever. walking out with a water bottle and letting that be there. It's just still talk to people, still witness to people,
Of
but
course.
that is something I want to try to start pushing and do this way, so that way. And the only way to view that gospel presentation video is through this process. So
Mhm.
I'll have those. I mean, those codes are already active. So, and the website's up. So if you get on, if you're interested, like I said, you should see those. And any help. And if I understand, it's not for
Yeah.
everybody. So always subscribe to is always a benefit. So
Right. And hey, the subscribing, that's free for both of us. So if you're
yeah,
not subscribed to our YouTube channels, do it, please. But dude, that's awesome. And love the I'm to hop on there and use that promo code. Hey, I'm not that's really cool. And I think if and this is up to you, of course, if you want to put, like, if you're talking about for other podcasts to listen to, put mine on there, because I want people to hear these stories that I've been doing. And I'm
yeah,
not just saying that for like a shameless plug, but like, I mean, because, and these stories are absolutely amazing, and yours
yeah.
included, so, but man, I will close, but can you pray us out, and then I will close us out?
Yes, sir. Sounds good.
All right.
Father, we come to you right now and just thank you for just the opportunity to have a conversation, to have some back and forth, and just have iron sharpen iron. God, we thank you for anyone that may be listening. Thank you that they were able to listen. I pray that you would just use something that we said today, that you would work through that, and you would use it to just give them a boldness to step out and witness for you, a boldness to step out and be a vessel that can be used by you. Just pray that you would give them the words to say when they do step out. Let them see that they don't have to have all the answers, that they just need to be willing. That's all you're wanting is willingness. Willingness from people to be vessels that you can work through and you can make the change through. So anybody that's listening, I pray that you would help them with that, give them the words to say. Anything else that anybody may be dealing with or has going on, pray you just be with them, comfort them, give them guidance, give them peace, whatever they need in their lives. Thank you for all that. Thank you for everything you've done for us, and pray this all in your name. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, brother, for coming on
Yeah.
again. And I can't wait to see what God does with it. And dude, I can't wait to see what God does through Basically Biblical, especially with all the new things you're coming out with. So, dude,
Appreciate
I
it.
am
Thanks.
so excited. We're praying for you. And thanks again, bro.
Yeah, it's always a blast.
Yes, sir. With another episode of the Young Minds Podcast coming to a close, I just want to remind you that you are never alone and faith is action. So let's get out there.